Welcome to my Amari Communications channel on YouTube. I'm Richard Cole, and this is my review for the self-titled album reissue of the Jacksons. February 12th saw the release on all digital platforms of the first three Jacksons Epic Records era. The self-titled The Jacksons, Going Places, and Destiny. So this is part one of a three-part review of each of those digital releases. And we're starting off with the self-titled album, The Jacksons. And starting with a brief history, the Jacksons were becoming dissatisfied with their situation at Motown Records. They wanted to write and produce their own material, similar to Stevie Wonder and Marvin Gaye, who both fought and won for creative independence at Motown. However, Berry Gordy didn't see it that way in regards to the Jacksons, and also their album sales or record sales weren't quite matching their, the heyday of ABC, I Want You Back, I'll Be There, and so on. Although they had some great, funky, underrated albums. Get It Together is one of my favorite Jackson 5 albums. Move in Violation was another album I enjoyed. Dancing Machine, that album, there are a lot of tracks I enjoy on that one as well, but they weren't quite getting the promotion. I would say maybe out of Get It Together, Dancing Machine was sort of their last big hit, so much so that to cash in, they put together Motown had them record the Dancing Machine album. And Move in Violation, although some great songs on that as well, didn't quite catch on again like their earlier 70s success. So the combination of those two things between the brothers and their father Joe Jackson, they wanted out of their Motown Records contract and ended up signing with Epic Records, which is, now we think of it all as Sony today. But back then it was Epic, and it was a subsidiary of Columbia Records or CBS Records, however you want to call it. But they made the transition over to Epic. A decision was made to do a joint venture with Philadelphia International Records, which had a sort of distribution deal with Columbia or CBS Records. And Philadelphia International were run by the great Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff. Extraordinary producers. They produce the OJs. They produce Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, which, of course, Teddy Pendergrass was in that group. And they produced a lot of his solo stuff as well. They had a brilliant in-house of other writers and producers. The MFSB, their studio band, excellent musicians on par with, say, Motown's Funk Brothers, any musician that was at Stax, the Wrecking Crew. Yeah, these cats need a documentary as well. So with that sort of push behind the Jacksons upon immediately signing with Epic Records, the first was a self-titled album called, of course, The Jacksons. It yielded the hit single Enjoy Yourself, which was probably their biggest hit in about 2 or 3 years. That was followed up by Show You the Way to Go, kind of a R&B hit here in America. It was #1 over in the UK. But pretty much a successful album. Wasn't quite as big of a success as, say, what, the OJs were putting out, or let's see, I believe Lou Rawls had an album on Philadelphia International right around this time that was very successful. I think that was the year of You'll Never Find, if I'm not mistaken. If not, it was a year later. But still, me being a lifelong Jackson 5 fan, just even being a little kid, I was aware that they were dissatisfied with being at Motown. They wanted to write and produce their own material. I was kind of aware of the importance of that, even though we're talking 75, 76, being about 9 or 10 years old. Just being aware that that carries some weight. Stevie Wonder was putting out great material. Marvin Gaye was putting out great material. You had people like Paul McCartney coming out with great stuff. So why shouldn't the Jacksons have a crack at that type of success as well? So it was kind of weird. There was a lawsuit. Motown was suing the Jacksons for breach of contract. Of course, the Jacksons wanted out of Motown. They were able to get out of Motown, but Motown got to keep the Jackson 5 name. And, so here we are. And to add insult to injury, as the Jacksons album was being released, as Enjoy Yourself was getting massive radio play and climbing the charts, Motown decides to cash in on some vault tracks or outtakes or whatever you want to call them, and put it all together in a compilation called Joyful Jukebox Music. So you can imagine at 10 years old, you go in and you're in the store, you see a Jackson 5 album that you've never seen before, you buy it, and it's like, well, I thought the song was called Enjoy Yourself. Maybe it's called something else. You take the album home, realize that there's no Enjoy Yourself to be found on it. It's not a half bad album, but you want the album with Enjoy Yourself on it. And so, yeah, that created a lot of confusion for those of you who weren't around in 1976. But eventually I did get the Jacksons album. The other tale too was that, wait a minute, why is Jermaine on the cover? Jermaine decided to stay at Motown. What's going on? But again, ended up with the Jacksons album, and it's a good album. I like a lot of the songs on it. So in talking about the reissue of the record, it's a digital release only, meaning that there is no reissue of a CD or no reissue on vinyl as of yet. So if you want physical media, you'd still have to buy whatever original pressings of the CD, or whatever the most recent pressing of the vinyl may have been, or go to a used record store and pick up a used copy somewhere. With that being said, listening to the digital version of this reissue, it's apparently been remastered, although they didn't say in the promotion for these 3 releases. They only said that the Jacksons Live, which will be released on vinyl in March, that has been remastered. But you can tell there is a difference between this digital version or digital reissue of this album and the other 2 as well, Going Places and Destiny. There are differences between that and other physical media that I have owned over the years, meaning I had an original pressing of the vinyl. I still have that. It's a bit worn here and there, but still playable. But I did buy a newer copy of the original vinyl. I used to have the CD of it. whenever the CD version of it was released. And I don't know if they've done like a 20 or 24-bit remastering at some point. But as far as the digital reissue goes, overall, the mix to me is more open, and the songs breathe better than both the original vinyl and the original CD version. And again, like I said, I don't know if either of these digital reissues, I don't know if they've benefited from, or the original versions of the CD benefited from any 20 or 24-bit remastering. Say, like if they were reissued in the late 90s or within the 2000s, anywhere. If those have been remastered in any way, shape, or form to fit the 20 or 24-bit format that was prevalent at that time. But again, with this digital version, there is a distinct difference. And now, while I don't believe that this is a new master remix, similar to the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper, where that received a remix as well as a remastering, similar to the White Album and Abbey Road, which received their respective 50th anniversary releases and box sets. I don't think that the Jacksons, Going Places, or Destiny, I don't think they've benefited from a remix. But again, I can't state enough how much of a difference there is with what you're going to hear on the digital version versus any original version that you may have owned in the past. And I mean, some subtle nuances on a lot of the tracks, mainly in regards to the bass, the horn arrangements, string arrangements, background vocals. There's a better separation among those elements in this digital version of the Jacksons album. Particularly with Enjoy Yourself and all three versions, the original album version, the 7-inch version, and the 12-inch extended version, which are all on this digital reissue. The actual bass guitar and sort of the maybe clavinet or bass keyboard, whatever's going on in the mix, there's a better separation. They're more prominent in the mix. And I believe that these elements, it's because it's on digital and the way we are now programmed to hear things, maybe not necessarily without the benefit of a good set of earbuds or maybe Beats by Dr. Dre. I think they're mixed more so for those elements, or if you stream via your television set and you have a good sound bar system or surround sound system, then the elements are mixed very well for this, and you will have a very enjoyable listening experience with it. But again, like I said, you will hear a lot of subtle nuances. For example, the floor toms of the drums, and then sort of the bass guitar on Show You the Way to Go. The mixes overall, they also allow Michael's lead vocals, even Jackie's co-lead vocals, to share space with a lot of the lush Gamble and Huff production style. So, with the original vinyl, which is basically what my ears are just programmed to automatically go to, even listening to whether it's a CD, physical CD version, or this new digital reissue version. It's like, yeah, you hear Michael's lead vocal, Jackie's co-lead vocal, or Marlon's co-lead vocal, depending on the song. But the background vocals tended to get sort of blended in with the strings or the horns or the other instruments, to where it got, looking back, it kind of felt a little muddy, even though you enjoyed the songs. I don't know if it's based on whatever pressing, if that had a difference in it. If you had the CD version, pretty much the same thing. It's like you get the song, you get the beauty of the song, but you're not really hearing the song. But with this digital reissue, there's percussive elements, there's certain horn punches here and there, or, just a lovely string line that, you never noticed it before. You knew it was there, because it's like, yeah, obviously there's orchestration that's there. Obviously there's horn section that's there. Obviously there's a rhythm section that's there. But to appreciate the actual production style of whether it was Gamble and Huff or McFadden and Whitehead, or, even the Jacksons themselves, because they have 2 tracks that they had a hand in writing and producing on as well. It brings those elements, or it spaces out the elements so well that you get to really appreciate the genius of the production work of Gamble and Huff. Beyond what they accomplished with the OJs, beyond what they accomplished with Teddy Pendergrass. But again, those things are spaced out so well that, like I said, I enjoy this version better than I have with any other version I've owned over the years. So speaking of the Jacksons' compositions on this album, like I said, there's 2, and which was a pretty good place to start. It's a shame that Motown didn't allow them to have at least 2 tracks on an album. They could have afforded to have them write or produce a couple of tracks, or have a say so at least in, the arrangements or something. But getting back to the Jacksons album on Epic, the track Blues Away, which is solely written by Michael, but it was a collaborative production effort with Gamble and Huff and the Jacksons. And for the liner notes, because there are no liner notes with the digital version, I have to go get my vinyl version. And looking at Blues Away, again, Michael Jackson wrote this one by himself. It's the first Michael Jackson composition officially released on an album. But it was produced by Gamble and Huff, McFadden and Whitehead, Dexter Wenzel, and the Jacksons. And this song, to me, listening to it now, I don't know. I really didn't have a lot for this particular track. I mean, I got it. This was the first time that they had something, and that's, to me, even at 10, I kind of got like, well, this is the first time they've written a song. I'm assuming that, like, an actual first time. Not that they probably had a bunch of stuff written and they just picked one for this record. But I don't know. It was just like, it's like when you compare it to Dancing Machine, or compare it to Get It Together, or compare it to even ABC or Sugar Daddy or something like that. Then it's like, for the first Michael Jackson song, it's a nice little mellow little ballad. And it was, I wasn't so knocked out by it, but it was nice to listen to. But just listening to it now with this reissue, looking at it now, this would have been a great hit for the Spinners. I think, with Felipe Wynn as part of the group, I think that this would have been a really good track. That's fit what they were doing with the, kind of that games people play sound, and that's still the Philly sound because Tom Bell, also worked with Gamble and Huff as well on a lot of, Philly records, or they use a lot of the same musicians on those. With Tom Bell, it was the Spinners, it was the Stylistics. They use all the same cats anyway. So basically, to me, like I said, I think Blues Away would have been a great fit for the Spinners. And not to say what Michael was doing was bad. Like I said, it was, they were encouraging Michael. Michael had ideas of what he wanted to do with his voice on the track. And, this is the starting point for what we would get from Michael Jackson a lot later. So, you can't hate on that. This is the starting point. This is the origin story. But like I said, I now appreciate it better because of the spacing of the mix now, the nuances that I'm hearing, and having that now tell me that, man, yeah, this would have been a great track for the Spinners. The next Jackson's composition is a song called Style of Life, and it's the last track that's on the album. And this was a composition that was written by Michael and Tito. And to me, I like this song better than I liked Blues Away. If there was a favorite Jackson composition on this particular album, and this is me because I had to look at the liner notes, because again, with the digital version, there are no liner notes. Unless you have Tidal. And sometimes they're not always accurate. But anyway, that was the source from the original vinyl. Michael and Tito wrote Style of Life. And like I said, to me, out of the two Jackson compositions, that one is my favorite. Even still, even though I have better appreciation for Blues Away, I really love playing Style of Life. I play it a lot. Actually, I had the Enjoy Yourself single, and Style of Life was on the B side of that. And so that was like, oh wow, they finally got to write a song and got to hear it. And again, like I said, it's an enjoyable track. And with again, a lot of the nuances that pop up. Now, when you hear it on the original vinyl, or if you hear the song on the original CD, when the Jacksons with their background vocals, you got to change your style of life. When you hear that, you hear, of course, the harmonies. You hear that. But what I've noticed in listening to this digital reissue is you hear Tito. His vocal stands out a little bit more in the background vocal. It's still kind of buried in the mix, but it's more present, or more prevalent with this digital reissue. And one of the things I noticed too, because it's his composition, it's a pretty good piece of work between the two of them collaborating on that. And what I hear is his excitement. Now, with Motown, because of the harmonies, they kind of had them sort of use the Temptations playbook when it came to their sort of background harmonies. And especially when you got to, the Get It Together through Moving Violation period. But they would sort of force Tito to kind of play the Melvin Franklin role. And again, this is what you get even with Gamble and Huff. doing the same thing. It's like, okay, Tito, you're relegated to play the Melvin Franklin role. And, again, like I said, you don't hear necessarily him. When I hear the background harmonies on a lot of the epic stuff, then to me, it's mostly, it's Michael sort of probably layering some of the background. And then there's Marlon and Jackie, maybe Randy. But with this track, it's like you hear Tito's excitement because it's like, this is my song and we're recording it. And it's like, you hear him, got to change your style of life, You kind of just hear that, you hear more enthusiasm because it's his song. Then it's like, okay, cool, I'm relegated to the Melvin Franklin role. I'm doing the deep baritone thing, even though that's not his natural, well, kind of in a way it's his natural register, but comparing it to the harmonies of the other brothers, that was the only role that, he could play. But to hear that enthusiasm, it's like, it's fun to hear because it's like, yes, they're finally getting what they want. They're writing their own songs now. And now we have, in addition to the original album, what makes this what they call the expanded edition of these albums. With the Jackson's album, you get the 7-inch single of Enjoy Yourself, the 12-inch single or extended version of Enjoy Yourself, and then there is a version of Living Together, which is called the Dimitri From Paris mix, and I'll get to that one in a little while. But I want to start with the Enjoy Yourself singles. Now, I had the Enjoy Yourself single, and to be honest, I have not played that single since I got the album back in 1976. So it was kind of weird and refreshing to hear this 7-inch mix, because not only does it have more bass in it because of the remastering, the ad-libs from Michael are more soulful to the end. Like, I don't know how many takes of the ad-lib vocal that they may have done, but this is definitely an alternate track that they used for the 7-inch single. And to me, I enjoy it. I enjoy it a little bit better than the album version. Although I like all three versions equally, but there's something refreshing because it's like, yeah, for the bones of the song, it's pretty much all the same. This is the 70s. The real remix didn't come around till, sort of post Prince, actually. But, back then you just maybe changed utilize a different alternate vocal take for the ad libs. But it's basically you're just repeating the instrumental parts, or, drowning out the vocals and just doing an extended part of the instrumental to make it a little bit longer. And that was just for the benefit of the discotheque, because that was the thing back then. But this, like I said, the 7-inch single version, you do have those extra ad libs from Michael. Again, the 12-inch version, just kind of cutting and pasting and, putting some instrumental parts, maybe repeating the bridge here and there, repeating one of the verses. But it's still enjoyable to listen to, and again, just having a remastered version, or, with the subtle nuances expanded on it, great. But the standout of this expanded version for me with this album is the Living Together Dimitri From Paris mix. Now, originally, I thought this was an unreleased take from, of course, 1976. But after researching Dimitri from Paris. You know, this guy, I think he started his career in the 90s, I think. But what he has is such a passion for the 70s that he was able to take this song. Lyrically, it's a great piece of music. It's a great album track, you know, and it fits well with this album. But it was never really a favorite of mine. I think maybe, God, maybe 10 or 15 years later, after having this album, so somewhere in the 80s or somewhere when I got the CD version, that I really started to enjoy the song a little bit better than I used to. Because it used to be a track sad to say, I would just skip. But, you know, again, as you get older and listening to the lyrics to it, again, I enjoyed it, but not as much as the other tracks on the album. But what Dimitri from Paris was able to do with this, like I said, you get the love he has for that era. And what he did was create a remix, to me, that makes this track stronger than the album version. And the reason why, there's elements in it that he does with this remix. It makes me feel that it was produced by Nile Rodgers and Bernard Edwards instead of Gamble and Huff. Because just the way he's just stripped certain parts of that song down. Emphasis on the guitar, kind of, I don't know if you can call it a guitar solo, but it's just kind of like a vamp. Like a lead guitar vamp or lead line that comes up later on in the song. But the way it's stripped down to just the bare essence of the rhythm section, I mean, it reminds me of Chic. It you know, I don't think that Chic, you know, borrowed that element, but it's something definitely, can't talk, instinctively what they would do production wise. And it works. All it needed was just maybe some rhythm guitars layered and brought up front a little more. And you would have, if you would have told me it was Chic, I would have believed you. But that's just the strength of this guy, Dimitri from Paris, and what he was able to do with this remix. Now, overall, I mean, number one, I do wish that there would be, and maybe this might come later on down the line, who knows, but I wouldn't mind having, at least, if nothing else, a vinyl release of this expanded version. Definitely a physical copy of the CD, complete with extensive liner notes. You know, it's kind of it's a nitpick, because I mean, they didn't keep it a secret what we were getting when they did the press releases for this stuff. They told you right off the bat, this is digital only, and this seems to be where the music industry is headed for 2021 and beyond, and slowly phasing out physical media. Maybe not necessarily vinyl, because that's still selling very well right now. But again, I'm a physical media person. I want a CD and I want vinyl. I want both. Heck, I'll even take cassette. But I've definitely been having a ball listening to this album. Like I said, I had the original vinyl, still do somewhere. Like I said, it's maybe slightly worn, but still playable. But I bought a newer copy and really hadn't played it much. I don't know. I really hadn't played it much since the original CD, since I had the original CD version of it. So, it might be about 10 or so years since I really listened to it. So listening to it now, I mean, not only, even though all these nuances and I'm hearing new things every time I listen to it, it still takes me back to 1976, going into 77. Um, it was a lot of great music in that period. Um, Great mix of, real musicians with maybe even some of the technology. Yeah, you got some clavinets and maybe some synthesizers going on, but you had people actually playing strings, violins and cellos, and you actually had horn sections in it. And the rhythm section, you had real drummers, playing real acoustic sets, and you had a bass player and guitar players and piano players and keyboard players. And it was just a great, exciting time. A lot of people, hate on disco, but this stuff was nowhere near disco. This stuff was funky, it was soulful, but what they were doing over at Philadelphia International with Gamble and Huff, the leaders of the pack, and the McFadden and Whiteheads, the Dexter Wenzels, they gave the funk some class and sophistication. Not that funk didn't have class and sophistication before, but funk not only moves, it removes. Funk is its own reward. And definitely what they were coming out with in Philadelphia has rewarded generations and hopefully generations to come too. And that's the good thing too, because this is the 50th anniversary of the Philadelphia International label. So it was fitting for the Jackson estate to acknowledge that both this album and Going Places, which I will talk about next week, it's fitting that those two albums are going to be available not only for a lot of us to reminisce and enjoy and experience all over again, but if you're new to Michael Jackson and want to know what the whole Jackson 5 thing, or in this case, the Jacksons, telling you there's a lot of beautiful music to experience, not just the Michael Jackson superstar solo stuff, but a lot of beautiful, organic, soulful songs that Michael was able to translate into the superstar stuff or integrate. So it wasn't just a pop song that he was doing. He put so much soul into even the poppiest of stuff, or even the most saccharine of stuff. So definitely, yeah, this is a period that definitely deserves to see the light of day, and I'm glad that they are starting with this. And by all means, not only are these songs or these albums, or this album in particular, it's available for streaming, but by all means, if you can, if you don't have a subscription to whatever, then by all means pay the $9.99 or whatever if you have Amazon Music or whatever. You don't have Unlimited, or if you don't have Tidal, you don't have Apple Music, or you have Apple Music, just not the subscription. By all means, it's worth the $9.99 to drop down on it and experience and listen to it. And that's going to be it for this episode. Or not episode, that's my other show. Check out Amari Purple Talk, by the way. That is my show every Monday, right here on this Amari Communications channel. But definitely come back here next week, and I will talk about the Going Places album. That will be my review of that album. And then the week after, we will wrap it up by talking about, of course, the Destiny album. Until then, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about this review of the Jacksons album, Are you planning on listening to it or getting it at some point? Do you want a physical copy or physical media version of the reissue? Leave me a comment. Let me know your thoughts. And until then, even though this is the Jacksons, what I always say on Amari Purple Talk is let's keep it purple and on the one.